Someone once, there was some issue that Reagan was discussing, and someone said, it's complicated. He said, it's not complicated. It's just not easy to do. I mean, right now, one of the big farces out here talks about affordable housing. And they're appointing blue ribbon committees to look into why there's no affordable housing. And I think that's like appointing a blue ribbon committee to explain why the ground is wet after a rain. I mean, it's very simple. If you prevent people from building housing and the population is growing, you're going to have a housing shortage, and you won't have affordable housing. It's really, economics 1 during the first 2 weeks.
What's up, YouTube? Hope you guys are feeling good. Today, guys, we're back here with a new video, guys. Today, we're going to check out debunking systemic racism and having common sense. Let me put it like that. This is by Thomas Sonwell and Rubin reports. This is going to be good to watch. Let's get right into today's video, guys.
What would you do about our school systems?
Oh my goodness! I'll try to be rational.
Do try.
They are so awful. The public has no idea what. I'm reading a book about the schools, and the woman who's writing it, Diane Ravitch, is talking about how teachers have due process before they can be fired. Now, when you look into the facts of it, right down here in, I think it was Atherton, it cost $500,000 to fire one incompetent teacher. You don't have a big enough budget, and
right.
in New York you have something called the rubber room. These are teachers who are so incompetent that the principals don't want them in the classroom, and they get paid full salary, and they show up, and they accrue pension rights and so forth. And the last time, I forget how many millions of dollars are spent a year in New York paying for teachers who don't teach, and in fact don't do anything but show up at the same time as if they were teaching, and they read magazines or whatever they feel like doing. And this farce goes on at a time when they don't have enough money to provide the kids with decent supplies.
So how do we scale back this? I mean, we can talk about it through the lens of education, but in any area where the government has taken on a bigger role than it's supposed to. I think one of the things you hear all the time is it's sort of too late. I think a lot of people think it's too late to take back that government power.
No, heavens, during the Reagan administration, that was the only time I know of when the Federal Register grew smaller, where they compile all the laws that have been passed in a given time. So it can be done. It's not easy, but it can be done. Someone once, there was some issue that Reagan was discussing, and someone said, it's complicated. He said, it's not complicated. It's just not easy to do. I mean, right now, one of the big farces out here talks about affordable housing, and they're appointing blue ribbon committees to look into why there's no affordable housing. And I think that's like appointing a blue ribbon committee to explain why the ground is wet after a rain. I mean, it's very simple. If you prevent people from building housing and the population is growing, you're going to have a housing shortage, and you won't have affordable housing. It's really, economics 1 during the first 2 weeks.
They're not very good at taking economics 101, I don't think. So would your answer be in almost every case to just scale back government, scale back regulation?
No, it depends on what they're doing. There are some things that government is necessary to do.
So what are those type of things that you...
For security, first of all, having dependable laws. Some people think that if you're for free markets, that means you don't think the government should do anything. No. The free markets don't operate except within a framework of laws. That's wholly different from having them operate with politicians jumping in at unpredictable times to suddenly pass some new legislation.
Yeah. What can we do right now? I mean, so really this would be about just sort of electing more libertarian-minded politicians then? I mean, is that really the only way we can change things, do you think?
No, I think the main thing, people have to know what the facts are themselves. If everyone knew what all the facts were, I think you'd have an entirely different set of people elected. I can't believe that either of the presidential candidates in 2016 would have been the candidates if you had an informed public.
Yeah, we're not very good at that. How much of this do you think is part of the media's fault? That's one of the things.
Well, the media are mostly uninformed. No, they're not uninformed. They are misinformed, and they simply do not check the facts on large issues or small.
Yeah. What can we do to fix that, do you think? I mean, I suppose this,
No,
right?
no,
right?
no,
Like
yeah,
writing books like this. And
Well, but I
having
think
long form.
more fundamentally, the public that votes has to itself become informed and not be so easily stampeded by slogans and a few numbers thrown around, like women make X% of what men make, and so on.
Yeah.
When I was studying that some years ago, for example, I found out that young female doctors made much less money than young male doctors. And that seemed like very odd. And so, but when you look into it, you discover that young male doctors work an average of 500 hours a year more than young female doctors, and they get paid for the 500 hours. But there's no reason why the women and men should be doing the same thing. Their circumstances are different.
So are there any laws that are in place right now that you believe are discriminatory one way or another towards any community or against any community?
Oh, I would have to write a much larger book to cover them all. The minimum wage law is absolutely devastating. The policy of saying that you cannot have more kids from one ethnic group disciplined in the school than from another is nonsense. I mean, groups are different from each other in umpteen ways, and to have the presumption that they are the same except for the way they're treated is nonsense. It's never been true, and I don't know why we would think it's true here today.
So I do sense that some of what you just said there is bubbling up into the national conscious, because I get a ton of email from black conservatives now, people that feel that they haven't been represented fairly, or that the so-called leaders of the black community that are on television all the time are actually preaching the complete reverse of everything that you've said here.
Yes.
Do you sense that there is some sort of growing conservative movement
within
the black community?
There was a time when that community consisted of me and Walter Williams. I know Walter used to say the two of us should never fly on the same plane, otherwise the whole movement will disappear if the plane goes down.
Well, I mentioned to you before we started that Larry Elder caused my awakening, because I was a progressive and I said something to him about systemic racism on air, and he beat me senseless with facts, and I had to go back and reassess what was wrong with my thinking.
Well, in one of the chapters there, I have a little section about the era of apartheid in South Africa. And I had that in there because there's so much argument about how much racism is there and so forth. And I said, let's test this hypothesis in a setting where there's absolutely no doubt of it. And that's apartheid in South Africa, with a government where blacks are not allowed to vote and so forth. And you then apply the economic principles, and you find that the economic principles apply in South Africa, that there are some occupations. See, blacks weren't allowed by law to be in certain occupations more than a certain percentage, and in some occupations couldn't be hired at all. In some of those occupations where they couldn't be hired at all, well, illegal to hire them at all, there were more blacks hired than there were whites, because there are economic factors that come in, and you don't just pass a law and that automatically produces the results you want.
Yeah. Can you go into some of the economic factors that you mentioned there? Because I thought it was sort of interesting about the types of jobs that black people had and why that would affect.
Well, it's the competitiveness of the industry. In a competitive industry, discrimination in the sense that we use for anti-discrimination laws, it costs the discriminator as well as the others. Now, insofar as that price can be evaded by the discriminator, he will discriminate. For example, minimum wage laws. When you have a minimum wage law, you have more people applying for jobs in those categories than there are jobs available, because raising the wage rate causes more people to apply and employers to hire fewer because they're more expensive. And so you have a chronic surplus. Now, if you've got a chronic surplus in an industry, it costs nothing to discriminate. But if you have a competitive market, then of course it does cost something For every person that you discriminate against who's qualified, you've got to hire somebody else, and you've got to raise that pay rate in order to get people in. So I show how competitive industries have much less discrimination than, say, regulated public utilities.
So I was wondering when I was reading it if you were ever going to talk about how now technology is also changing this. So we see a lot of these movements for $15 minimum wage, and I know why you don't think that's a great idea. But even now where we see McDonald's and some of these other places just replacing people with iPads and computers.
This has been happening. I don't know. When I grew up in Harlem, when you went into a movie theater, this is a little neighborhood movie theater in Harlem, there would be a kid who would walk down the aisle with you with a flashlight to show you to your seat, you see. And so now that we have so many compassionate people who want people to be paid a living wage, you stumble down the aisle to your seat the best way you can, because they're not going to pay you that kind of money, that's unrelated to productivity.
Yeah. What would you say to the people? I hear a growing movement of people saying, well, this is why we need a universal basic income, because technology is going to force so many people out of the workplace.
Oh, that argument has been made for centuries, and it's been proven wrong for centuries. I would ask the question, what has happened? We've moved in that direction already. We have lots of people who can live off the welfare state and not have to be productive. And how are they better people as a result of that? I saw some time back, and I haven't followed this, that young people, the suicide rates among young people were among the negative consequences of the 1960s. You've taken all meaning out of people's lives. And so they find all kinds of crazy things to do, drugs, whatever. And then, again, it's not peculiar to the United States. You find this in Britain, other countries. And so, again, people who say this almost never look at any facts about what's happened as we expanded the welfare state. Did people behave better? No. I mean, one of the things moments that I remember very well, when I was back into school in Harlem for some reason, maybe doing research, and I looked out the window and I said, when I was a teenager, I used to walk my dog in that park, and looks of horror came over the students' faces, because that was a different world. And so, and when I tell them that I used to sleep out on a fire escape on hot summer nights, who could afford air conditioning, and they think I'm a man from Mars. People did that all over New York. They did it in Washington. They did it in North Carolina. Relatives in Washington used to go down Haynes Point down near the Jefferson Memorial on hot summer nights and sleep there till sometime after midnight when the heat wouldn't be so bad, and they'd go home at that time. You'd be out of your mind to do that today. It'd be too dangerous.
Yeah. So how do we sort of untie some of this? So my sister right now lives on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, not too far from Harlem, and she's in a half rent stabilized or rent controlled building, yes, and half market price. She's on the market price, so she's paying to be in a 2-bedroom in New York City. I don't even want to tell you how expensive it is. But then there are basically half of the building that's paying next to nothing. And that, of course, incentivizes people not to get off the dole, because if you're living in a nice area on the Upper West Side, very cheap, why in the world would you ever get off the dole? How do we start solving these problems? And I know facts is your bedrock answer.
Yes.
But what can we do to get people to understand some of this stuff? Because it seems so basic to understand. If someone was giving you something that you didn't earn,
again,
it's hard to.
This is common. One of this in Europe, in England especially, it's a special problem, because you have this place where your rent is subsidized, and say you're in London, and jobs are disappearing in London, and they're opening up in Manchester. Now, if you go to Manchester, you get on a waiting list for that kind of job. And if you stay in London, you're unemployed, but your rent is low. And so you slow down the movement of people. You slow down the turnover of people in these apartments. But again, most people who talk about this don't even talk in terms of if this, then that. They talk about it as this is how the world ought to be. Well, heck, I can think of all kinds of things of how I think the world ought to be. But unfortunately, most of those things involve a cost, a trade-off.
Do you think there's a system or a government that's doing it better, doing freedom better than we're doing it here? For all the flaws that we have in this system, is anyone doing it better than us?
Oh, there may be marginally so. But I think most of the Western world is less free than it was, say, 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
By what measurements do you view that?
Oh, just the amount of regulations, things and also by consequences. I was reading Milton Friedman's. He and his wife had a joint autobiography, and she's looking at one point. She says looking back on the days when she would ride the IND subway in Manhattan, and what a joy it was. And she said in those long gone days, and the IND subway goes through Harlem. And Milton Friedman and his wife, when they were still courting, used to go dancing at the Savoy Ballroom. Very few people want to, and you know the famous theme song of Duke Ellington, "Take the A Train."
Mm-hmm.
The A Train goes right through Harlem on the IND line. And so Friedman, who was only 5'2", had no fear of being mugged or even accosted, and go there. And this was common. There was a black actress who used to get finished with play and her socializing afterwards. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, she said she would be taking the subway up to 155th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue by herself and walking home. Nobody does that these days. And so you have to look, one, at what are the facts? How did they change? And you don't simply say. The other thing is that they're saying the No Child Left Behind thing with Bush.
Mm-hmm.
There are kids who go to school to raise hell, and a handful of those can prevent the whole class from learning anything. Now, the logical thing would be to separate those kids out and let the ones who want to learn something. You can't do that because the ideology says no. And so you sacrifice whole generations of poor and minority kids for this ideology and this utopian notion.
Yeah, and we end up in an odd dystopia, probably.
Yeah, and Milton Friedman used to say, the best is the enemy of the good. Yeah. And of course, it would be better if everybody could be educated at the same time. It can't be done.
So as someone that has survived the arrows and the venom that the left can throw at you, because I see a lot of this these days, I see even what they say to me, I find I get a lot of email from people saying, how can I be brave enough to do it? And I think it's particularly a unique situation for minorities that consider themselves conservative or libertarian or a little bit to the right. So I mentioned Larry Elder before, and of course you and my friend David Webb, and there are some more black conservatives than perhaps there used to be.
No question about it.
What would be if someone's watching this right now and just needs that little extra bit of courage to start saying?
No. You have to look at the circumstances. I mean, I've advised some young people. Do not go into teaching in the public schools because the odds are so stacked against you, and people can write bad references for you, especially when you're young, and what they say about you is all that someone sees. Now, by the time I was teaching at some of these schools, I remember one place where the department chairman used to threaten one of my colleagues that he wouldn't write good references for him. I'd published stuff while I was still in graduate school. I had Milton Friedman and George Stigler to write references for me. What this guy said there as chairman of the department wouldn't matter a bit. But most people don't have that situation.
No.
And so you have to pick your fights.
So I want to, time is limited here. I want to mention one thing that you say right at the end of the book, that really what we need more than anything else, perhaps, is common decency.
Yes.
And we've kind of lost that.
It isn't common anymore. I mean, when I was going to school and we'd have fights on the schoolyard grounds, when one guy was clearly beaten, whoever was the toughest kid in the crowd would simply step in and stop it. And the other guys said, "You want to fight? You can fight me." You know.
That's what we need in the public square now.
Yes, yes. But I mean, it's only so much the police can do. If you don't have common decency, the cops are not going to be able to handle it. And especially when everyone is second guessing it. I love it when people who have never fired a gun in their lives say, "Why do the cops fire so many guns?" Now, at one time, I taught pistol shooting in the Marine Corps. It doesn't surprise me in the slightest that they fired so many things under those conditions. But people can't be knowledgeable about everything, but they can be knowledgeable about the extent of their own ignorance, even if they have PhDs.
Sir, this has been a true honor and a pleasure, and I know I can see it in your eyes, even the sort of humility that you have and humbleness. But you've affected so many people and are still continuing to affect so many people, and I hope that we might have just given that a little extra bump today. So I'm truly honored that you took the time.
Well,
today.
thank you very much.
Thomas Sowell, like his books are really, really engaging and interesting. Talks more about black race and about the victim aspect. It's beautiful. Him saying about decency, that we have actually lost our decency, is true. If you think about it properly, there's not much that the police can try to do. Always be there around, so when things want to happen. So is what was going to help you is the aspect of your decency in aspect to control the situation at hand. So he was actually making like good points right there. The entire discussion with this Rubin report was actually interesting to watch. I love the honesty, I love the sincerity, and I love the maturity in the entire video itself. It was good. It was good to watch. I would say Thomas Sowell was one of the most, should I call him a professor? He's an author, but he's a very smart man, and his words have meaning. And to figure out that this man is in his 80s, like, even though in his 90s now, like I'm sure he's 86 or 90 years now, and he's this great, intelligent, and he despises victim mentality and victimhood or black thinking that the slave, whereas black people thinking like that the victim, that the one who struggled more, that the one who was oppressed. Whereas it is during slavery, it was the black that was selling the black to the white people. So it's like a business. You understand? So whenever you hear Thomas Sowell break things down, you'll be like, wow, this man is very knowledgeable. And hearing him speak right here about, in general, I feel like he's talking about life in general too to me, and about the race, systemic racism. I love that he debunked it in the very right way, and people who pay attention to this, you know that he's actually saying the truth. And I know a lot of left wing would not like him for this. This was actually interesting to watch. Comment down below what you think about this video. Give us a thumbs up. Share this video as many as you can. Subscribe to the channel, guys, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure you stay safe.